What was the worst thing your boss ever said to you? It was 6 months after my son was born, and I just put in new workstations and design software for my team. Everything was running pretty smoothly, but my son had a health crisis, and I was back to getting 4 hours of sleep each night. My boss started to want me to come in an hour earlier than the team to resolve, quote, any problems before they started their morning coffee. When I protested, as I was already working 10-plus-hour days, he took me aside and told me he'd talked to the director and they were thinking about replacing me because of my poor performance. It was all lies. The director was ecstatic with my work. I guess that's when you agree and then you leave. And before I forget, other me is over on Rufus Stories doing what he does best, unpacking some crazy relationship stories. It's a good time, I promise you. Links in the description if you're down. All right, back to these stories. Story 2. While getting my PhD in astrophysics, I had a totally brand new idea for a research paper. I built a framework for it, wrote some code, and showed some preliminary analysis to my PhD advisor. In his typical fashion, he didn't like the idea because it wasn't his. He called my idea high school geometry that anyone could do and a waste of time. I went ahead and wrote the paper anyway and submitted it as a solo author. It got published and was pretty well received by the community and ended up being an important stepping stone for some of my future work. A few years after I graduated, JWST directly observed my idea, and a bunch of other people jumped onto my research. My PhD advisor called me up and admitted he was wrong, which was extremely rare for him. Haha. Story 3. My boss left a signed contract to give to the landlord. I noticed the prices were completely out of whack with the market, so I did some investigating and got new estimates. I talked to the landlord and he provided a new contract with significantly lower prices, saving my boss literally tens of thousands of dollars. My boss said, "You must have too much time on your hands." I asked for a small raise. The savings would cover my raise 10 times over. He refused the raise, so I found a job that paid me significantly more. When I gave him my resignation letter, he said he'd give me the raise. I chuckled and said he could no longer afford me. Story 4. One time I had a boss scream in my face in front of the rest of my coworkers because of a perceived mistake I made. It wasn't me, it was a vendor who could do no wrong in his eyes. He was the son of the owner of a small family-owned company, the type of place that you called quote-unquote family. I wish I had the mental awareness and experience that I do now to have walked out at that moment. I ended up getting let go from that crap show, the only job I've ever been fired from. Screw people like that. Story 5. Can you go through my PC and delete all old, unnecessary stuff? I knew I was going to find some embarrassing, unprofessional stuff, and he stood behind me the entire time. I found stuff. For context, this was 20 years ago during a summer internship at a US embassy. I was assigned to a division with the head of the department. He was a big guy and kind of loud and intimidating, a no-nonsense type. The type that would get very angry and yell. He actually took quite a liking to me and tried to get me to be his personal assistant for things that shouldn't have been my responsibility. He asked me to do stuff on his PC before, which is why I kinda knew that I didn't want to look through his files. That day when he asked me, I knew I was going to find some stuff. He had me open every file, including pictures. I opened a number of pictures of him and pictures of women, as well as documents like how to please a woman. Nothing horrible, but they shouldn't have been on his PC. He was also not the type to have any shame, so when I opened them, he would shrug and say, "Delete that." The program was an amazing experience, and I got a lot of great experiences. When the summer ended and I had to fly back to the US to continue university, he flat out told me, "I really like your work ethic. My next post is Afghanistan and I want you to come with me. I'll pay you $200,000 a year. What do you say?" I didn't take him up on the offer because I was a current student at university, but sometimes I wonder how different my life would have been had I accepted. That guy was very serious. The request was legit. Story 6. I worked for Cracker Barrel a long time ago. One day a manager asked me if I could come in overnight to blanch bacon. I'd never done it before, so he just told me what to do but didn't actually show me. You basically just cook the bacon halfway. I came in and did the best I could based on what he told me. The next day, or whenever I was next scheduled, I came in. Right when I saw the manager, he said, "You single-handedly ruined all the bacon." That was just a bummer to hear. I just hung my head and said, "Dang, sorry," and walked away. The crazy part was after I had walked around the line, the guy who was working the grill that day saw me and said, "I don't know what the heck he's talking about. I opened this morning and everything was fine. I would eat this. There's nothing wrong with any of this bacon." Story 7. The day before I left for vacation, my manager called me into the president's office. The president then called me a pain in his butt, among other things, and proceeded to list a bunch of things wrong with me. It was the first time I had heard any of those criticisms. Some were valid, some were not. They hinted I needed to shape up or else. At the time, it was very early in my career, so I really believed them when they said I was the problem. Looking back, I realized how much poor management was going on there. Part of me wishes that I had quit on the spot for the president's language alone. Story 8. I worked at a famous donut shop chain. The managers kept a call off list where they recorded absences and their details. They started posting this list in the office where everyone would count their registers and it would show things like food poisoning or flu. This made me really uneasy. I rarely called off, but I still brought up that it was wrong. They claimed they weren't breaking any rules since it was posted in the office. One day, they crossed the line and wrote period cramps where everyone could see. I told my male manager how disgusting and disrespectful that was. He told me, "No offense, but you need to mind your business." I was so livid and I said, "As a woman, that is my business." He was the regional manager's nephew, by the way, so he said, "Okay, I'll bring it up to the general manager and see what she has to say." I got an apology the next day and they took that list down real quick. I think they realized they messed up and didn't want it to get escalated. Story 9. Do you want me to smack you? That was my MD in front of the whole office because he had said an installation drawing I had done was wrong, and I had pointed out it was, in fact, correct. He was shocked when I handed him my notice a couple of weeks later and blurted out, "But I'll have to hire 2 people to do your job." He then asked if he could make me an offer. Having just told me he'd have to hire 2 people, he offered me an extra grand a year and you can keep the company car. But it was already mine and there was no mention before of not keeping it. It was integral to my job. I politely declined his terrible offer and coasted through my notice period before moving for more money and less work. Story 10. You're just a grunt. I outrank you and you don't need to think. What made it worse is that he was my quote-unquote best friend whom I'd known since junior high. I lived with him and other roommates. We all worked in the same place. The stuff he would say and do outside of work was way worse. He'd push buttons until I delivered an emotional response. He knew every bit of trauma and used his own to write his behavior off as no big deal. In retrospect, it's pretty clear that I was in a messed up relationship with a narcissistic closet case. I'm so glad I decided to stop talking to him. Story 11. I had a miscarriage at work, had to leave, and of course everyone wanted to make sure I was okay. I'm an STNA in a nursing home. The assistant DON was texting me. I told her what happened and called off a few days. When I got back, my boss came up to me, told me he was sorry for what happened and that he understood what I was going through. I'd been with my husband for about 10 years, not so much as one pregnancy scare, and being pregnant was the happiest I had been in years. That was taken from me. I just smiled and walked away. That stuff broke me for months. Nurses talk a big game about confidentiality and things, but my life was gossip. 5 people were pregnant at the same time as I was. I had to listen to them talk about how their pregnancy was going, and I lost mine. I had my first daughter in June 2023. I can't tell you how long it took for me to accept I was going to have a baby. It took me until I started showing. LOL. Story 12. When I called in tears saying my grandpa had just passed away, his reply was, "You're still coming in tomorrow, right? It's 11 p.m. I won't find anyone to cover your shift." Not said with anger, but with a lot of concern. I told him that I'd try to be there the next day, and I was. Working, being with fun, nice people, and serving customers took my mind away from the hardships I was living, and by the end of the day, I was all smiles. It was the departure I processed best to this day. Keep in mind, he passed away 3 days short of a year after my other grandpa passed away. That time, I took the day off and felt terrible all day long. I later thanked my boss, a formidable man, for insisting on me coming in that day. He told me I could take any day off. It'd be paid time, no issues. Best boss I ever had to this day. Story 13. Another intoxicated coworker made a comment at a work retreat and my boss thought it was me. I told them it wasn't me, that I was sober and was trying to be the voice of reason for all the other quote-unquote adults. They woke the boss up and the boss came out to shut down the party, so the coworker made a comment about, "Uh-oh, it's the police." Apparently, this really upset my boss. My boss blamed me, and when I told them exactly how my entire day of the retreat went leading up to that event, I was told I was lying and that they thought I was a liar. That stuff messed me up for a while because it was clearly the other coworker. They make inappropriate comments hourly. It took all I had not to tell my boss all the other unprofessional things that went down or were said that night. My boss said they would investigate but never followed up with me. I heard from another coworker that my boss did follow up and the actual culprit admitted to it, but my boss told them they were lying to protect me or some nonsense like that. Story 14. Me. Hey, I need a raise. You've avoided my yearly review meeting for 6 months now, and with my recent promotion, I'm not making tips anymore. So I'm bringing in about $1,400 a month less despite working twice as many hours. My assistant is making more than I do now. Boss, you made that much in tips when you were bartending? How? You're probably the most unlikable person I've ever had the displeasure of meeting. Anyway, I have dinner reservations I'm running late for and I leave for my cruise tomorrow afternoon. We can talk about your compensation in 2 weeks when I'm back. Okay, so the secret to making good tips is apparently being unlikable? He's been doing it wrong this whole time. Story 15. My manager invited me for a yearly performance review talk and told me, I have a subjective feeling that you don't do good enough work. I asked for more details if I'd messed anything up, any specific things to improve, anything at all to try to fix it. The response was, no, nothing I can think of, but I have great expectations of you. I asked how he would know if anything got better, and he replied, that will also depend on my subjective feelings. I got laid off a month ago because of, quote, optimizing processes in the company. It turned out the manager recommended me and another guy when the new owners asked to get rid of some people to boost their quarterly reports. Story 16. I don't remember exactly what was said because I was so shocked and hurt that all I could do was run to the bathroom and cry for 10 minutes while debating whether or not to go home and never come back. I probably should have done that, but this was right after the lockdown began, so I didn't know if I would be able to find another job or get unemployment. I worked at an eye doctor's clinic. I was brand new to the field, so I didn't know anything. I just finished my training, which wasn't that thorough now that I'm thinking about it. It was my first day, on my own. Due to my poor training, I missed a crucial step in the process of performing one of my duties. The boss, who was also the main doctor of the clinic, came to me in the hallway and just started screaming at me about how I messed up. And I mean screaming literally. She was really angry, red in the face, eyes bulging, spitting. I really thought she was going to hit me. Everyone stopped to watch, and no one, not even my supervisor, who was standing right there, did anything. To add icing to the cake, they kept all of the exam room doors open, so there were patients coming out into the halls to see what was going on. They heard it all. Everything fell silent, and all you could hear was that doctor yelling at me. I was so humiliated. I honestly had no idea about the part I missed because it was never explained to me during training. Even if it was explained to me and I still messed it up, that's not how you speak to someone. I don't remember saying anything back to her. Back then, I was much more shy and had no skill in standing up for myself. Plus, I was brand new. I didn't exactly feel so confident in getting in an argument with the boss in my first week of being hired. LOL. Lesson learned. Finally, after about a minute or so of the tantrum, the doctor left me and quite literally stomped over to our office manager and slammed his door to yell and complain more. The next thing I remember is being in the bathroom for a long time just crying. I think I was more hurt that nobody stepped in or at least tried to talk to me about what happened. I was the new girl and I just felt so stupid and alone at that moment. I was paid $11.50 an hour for that job. Story 17. When I first started working, I was being bullied by my team lead when I was working in a lab. One day, she said something really inappropriate, and I went to leave when a senior manager summoned me to his office. He proceeded to tell me that I shouldn't leave and that there are only a few labs that you can possibly work for and you can be sure you won't get a job in any, implying that if I walked out, I'd never get another job. I was very young, but still new to tell him that threatening me didn't frighten me in the slightest, and it was evident he had a small Johnson syndrome. I went on to work in a different lab for over a decade. Story 18. I worked in a pizza shop for my first job. It was often just me, the boss, and the delivery driver, boss's dad. There was a bottle shop, alcohol, a couple of stores down. The boss had an arrangement with one of the guys who worked in the bottle shop. Free pizza for a few free little minibar bottles of booze. One night after sending off the driver with an order, I went into the big walk-in fridge to get more cheese and the boss came in to have a drink. He then told me if I performed a whistle on him in there, no one would see and I could get a big bonus in my next pay. When I declined, he offered booze to help me relax. Story 19. You have a meeting with me in 1 hour. You can bring a support person. This was followed by, your role is no longer required and we have not found a role for you. Grab your belongings and hand in your pass. As a sole family earner supporting a new family and with my visa tied to employment sponsorship, it meant my US-born kids and family had 2 months to leave the country. That experience hurt and still hurts to this day, a decade later. I will carry the hatred for her until I am wiser to know better and let it go. Story 20. You only got this new position because the guy you were considered as a finalist with had a write-up for being late. What really stung upon hearing that is I'm friends with the other guy, still am, and I knew for the first 3 years I was still there. It chafed my former supervisor's butt to know me getting that job was because he couldn't finagle me out of it and his hands were tied. When his write-up came off, another position opened up for him after the other guy had quit, so he applied again and he got it. He and I handled business together and had each other's back. He's a stand-up guy. It just broke my spirit thinking I got it because I was the right choice and worked hard, but nope. On the flip side, after being a cost-cutting termination along with 75 to 80 other people, I got a new job within 2 months. Everything and everyone at this place is the complete opposite. 2 months shy of my second anniversary there, my supervisor had me in his office with our plant manager and one of the assistant supervisors, and they told me they wanted me to start training for a new position because of this, that, and the other reasons. To hear him say, "The three of us have been discussing who it would be, and we believe you're the right person. You're here, you work hard, you care, and you pay attention to details. We've seen you handle changes on no notice. We believe you have what it takes to learn this, and we know we are putting you behind an 8 ball because you don't have experience with anything else but the laser, but we do not see any reason you won't be able to do this and do it well." I just stood there and I had a, "Are you sure you're talking about me and not someone else?" reply. As I said that, I turned around in a joking type of manner to them, as if to say, "Are you sure it's me and not someone else in here behind me I didn't see?" motion. I turned around and had to wipe a darn tear out of my eye. I thanked them all and said I was extremely grateful to be finally recognized solely based off of my work ethic and not because I played the game or anything like that. They said, "Well, you've earned it, so congratulations." I said thank you to all three of them, shook their hands, and walked out. I went right to the bathroom for about 5 minutes to gain my composure. It felt so amazing to finally be recognized like that compared to the other place, which was always backhanded compliments and only going somewhere because someone sucked up the most. It's been 5 weeks since I started, and if you were to ask me, I'd say I'm not doing good at it, but they would say otherwise, mostly because I don't like to brag about how good I am, and I let my work speak for me. But they would tell you I'm doing far better than they expected for not having any experience at all at this new position, and I have no regret at all in their choice. Story 21 accused me of stealing $1,200 out of an envelope that had $10,000 in it. I told him if I was going to steal from him, I'd have taken the whole thing. I had to do some sleuthing, but narrowed it down to someone who stole rent money, what it cost at the time 12 years ago. Traced his steps of the day before, and lo and behold, he had stopped at an escort's house. I asked him what happened there. There were 2 girls, but he was only seeing one. I said, "Well, there you go. Girl number 2 robbed you while you were with girl number 1. He denied, and denied. "Girl number 1 would never do that to me." I said, "Yeah, she didn't. Girl number 2 did." He shows me where he had it in his truck, the lockable glove box. "They broke the lock." I said, "Here, lock it," he said. And I said, "Look, it opens right up. They busted the lock tab off." I quit that job a month later after getting stiffed a week's pay and my boss leaving and going on a cruise without notifying everyone. The place was a mess, but I learned a lot. And if you're also learning a lot and enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 22. I didn't make my review after being a leading hand in 2024 for a big earth-moving company here in Australia. After 40 years working in heavy-duty mobile plant, earth-moving, I was told that my technical skills weren't up to scratch and that I was reactive. After every swing, I would ask my supervisor if I was up to scratch. They kept telling me I was all good and that they were happy with my progress. 3 weeks before my review, I started to see a few flaws in behaviors in one of the supervisors. This was a red flag for me. If it wasn't their idea, they wouldn't like it, yet it was making my job more effective. It was a no-brainer. People on my swing were talking trash about me behind my back, and the supervisor was swallowing it hook, line, and sinker. The majority were happy as I led from the bottom up, which they liked as a style of leadership. Most were happy to come to work because the atmosphere was good. I was addressing safety issues which they were turning a blind eye to, yet would put the onus on me. Parts and services kits weren't available all the time and I would have to scrounge to get equipment going. I don't find this normal for a huge company like this. In the interview, the HR lady had no idea what was transpiring and my termination was predetermined. She claimed it wasn't. I could go on, but I'm over it now and fully committed to index crypto trading over the last month and made more money than I could ever imagine. Story 23. My old boss said, "Just remember not to bet on the wrong horse" when I was a temp. This was because she was a schmuck to my sweet faculty member after she saw her give me the most defeated look, having just been ripped into by the boss. Nobody liked her, the old boss where I worked. Thankfully, she retired and left, and our new boss is the sweetest guy I've ever met who genuinely cares about his team. She also said to another one of my colleagues who was also a temp, "If I was 20 years younger," because he looks so good when you walk around with that guitar over your shoulder, in front of our whole faculty at a staff meeting. Story 24. This wasn't me, but it was the CEO of the company I worked at about 15 years ago speaking to another employee at our in-office Christmas party. Anyway, there was this really awful tradition of having a Christmas party during office hours, just for managers. The other rank and file had to continue working while we were having our party in office, like WTF. Part of this party was giving quote-unquote joke gifts to each of the managers. Most of the time, they were relatively benign. An employee who favored stiletto heels was given a pair of earth shoes. Another employee who enjoyed eating at high-end restaurants was given a gift card to McDonald's, etc. It's important to note that it was the CEO himself and his quote-unquote elves, a couple of the younger employees, that planned and executed all of this. So, the final year this party was held, all the gifts except one had been given out. The final gift was for Luke, a manager who was a very traditional guy. He had 4 young kids with a 5th on the way. and a stay at home wife who cared for the kids, their home, etc. Well, somehow the CEO thought it would be funny to give Luke a box of condoms in front of all of his coworkers so he didn't end up with a sixth kid. The room went silent, and you could tell Luke was mad. He just got up and walked out of the room. The CEO played it off and just told folks to help themselves to the food and drink in the room and continue the party. Why the CEO, who was generally a pretty normal, personable guy, thought this was okay, I will never know. Well, Luke marched straight to HR to complain, that much I know. How it was eventually settled, I do not know. He ended up leaving the company about 6 months later, not too much longer after his fifth child was born, and we never had a manager's Christmas party ever again. Definitely a good thing. Story 25. In 2018, I left my old job. The place was a dump, and the pay was abysmal. I'd had some unplanned time off at the start of the year because my nan passed away on Christmas Eve, and I had a home invasion a week later on New Year's Eve. The whole place knew what had happened, from the grunts to the directors. My boss came to me after I handed in my 2 weeks' notice in March and asked me if I had a job lined up. I said I did and told him where. He said, "Just be more careful about having time off in that place. They're less forgiving than I am." Enraged, but as calmly as I could, I said, "That's all right, I have no more grandparents left, and next time someone busts down my door, I won't bother with the police, I'll just terminate him, eh?" He never talked to me again. Good riddance, Carl, you fat schmuck. Story 26. Just manage their expectations. That's just manager speak for, I don't give a darn, that's your problem. I work for a state-funded law firm. Clients had legal inquiries that I was not able to answer. And when it comes to legal practice, particularly counsel, you do not speculate, guess, or lie. I did what made the most sense to me, which was to go to my manager, whom apparently had the experience to warrant them filling that role, only to be told the top line. I've since moved into a new workplace with an incredible manager, and I'm so darn happy about that. I wake up with a smile, and I'm happy to go to work to help people, see my colleagues, and have a laugh in the lunchroom with my manager. Story 27. There are many of them, always passive-aggressive. The latest ones called me a, quote, wuss for not working even when I was sick. I had severe nervous gastritis from stress due to the job, and I couldn't even sleep. They also told me I should be able to tell when I'm about to get sick, like 1 to 2 days in advance, so I can give them notice. When I handed in my resignation and expressed how I felt the new trainee was more involved in the work with them than I was, they said it was because she had more qualifications than I did, as if I were somehow less capable for not having pursued higher education and choosing to work instead. Story 28. Boss, you have a reputation for missing work every time you get sick. Take me, for example. I never call in sick. Flu, stomach bug, nothing makes me call in sick. Follow my example moving forward. Me, thinking, thanks, fearless leader, for bringing that illness to work, schmuck. Ever wonder why my household stays sick? I get it from you, I give it to my wife, she gives it to my son gives it to my daughter. Not only do I miss work for my illness, now my wife and I are taking turns missing work when the kids get sick. Want me to stop getting sick and missing work? Stay home when you're sick so I don't catch it. Story 29. I was about to go into a seizure at work and I was sitting on the ground, something I never did. Other coworkers could tell something was wrong and she said, "If you're gonna mess around, clock out." I walked into the employee bathroom and had a seizure in there. I knew I was in there for probably 15-25 minutes, and when I came back, she was all huffy and puffy about it. By the way, I was still clocked in. Forget you, Courtney. I should have sued her for medical neglect and discrimination because she was well aware of them, and that was the only time I had one at work. Story 30. My cousin surprised me. She lives in England for my birthday trip, and I hadn't seen her in a decade. I told my boss and asked if someone could cover for me for an extra day the following weekend so I could spend more time with her. Keep in mind, someone was, in fact, able to cover for me. My boss proceeded to yell and scold me for my schedule being, quote, so difficult to work around. I was working part-time because I was in college. I explained how I had no idea my cousin was surprising me and that since I hadn't seen her in 10 years, I wanted to spend as much time as possible with her during her visit. My boss proceeded to not care. I started crying. She was harshly yelling at this point in front of customers, might I add, and she proceeded to yell at me more for crying and making her look like the bad guy, saying how all summer she had to bend over backward for my schedule. Sorry, that classes started back up. The worst part was towards the end of the day, my mom, aunt, and said cousin came to the place of work to meet everyone, and I had to sprint to their car and tell them to leave immediately because of how awful the day was. My biggest regret is not getting in my car and leaving that minute. If that happened to me now, I wouldn't look back. I no longer work there, but still, it was a very sad and traumatic day for me. Story 31. We all know that Jenny was a real reason why Samantha was struggling at work, said the boss with a knowing smile. Samantha was a PhD student who had been supervised by the boss on top of working casual hours for her. The boss told her she would fail her PhD and would never be able to be a group leader because she wasn't smart enough, wasn't a people person, and spoke poor English. It was flawless and barely accented. This was almost a daily mantra in private and in public. It was a total ploy to manipulate Samantha into thinking she had to stay working for the boss for peanuts and be grateful for it. Jenny was Samantha's best friend at work and would go to extra efforts to help share the load, bringing her lunch and coffee, stay back with her, and try to lift her mood. A lovely girl. Anyway, one day Samantha organized a meeting with the boss in the boss's office. She yelled, "I can't do this anymore," and tried to end it all before the ambulance got there. The boss spent the rest of the month spreading rumors that Jenny had had a fight with Samantha and Samantha had been depressed because of it. Nothing to do with work. She booked a counselor that did one vague group session at our weekly team meeting, then banned us all from talking about the incident for Samantha and Jenny's privacy. Unbelievable. Story 32. A lot of my coworkers all had decently bad anxiety. I had confidence and I was the oldest of the bunch. So when they had issues, i.e. not getting a raise, getting forced to work too many shifts, I was the one who went to the boss about those issues. So naturally, he tried to gaslight me into thinking my coworkers hated me in what I assume is an attempt to make me insecure so I'd stop pushing back against his nonsense. I believed him at first, but when I actually asked my coworkers about it, they were all taken aback and confirmed he was lying. I spent 5 straight minutes screaming at him, calling him a piece of junk. Then I told his wife how he was acting. Lo and behold, things started improving after that. The perks of being too valuable to fire, I guess. Story 33. Why are you always overthinking and stressing about things that haven't happened yet? A coworker had just tendered her resignation and another was slated to be transferred out in 3 months, which would leave my unit severely understaffed, leaving only me and 3 other people when we should have been 7 to be fully staffed. But when I brought the issue to my boss's attention, she brushed me off. When the time came and that coworker did indeed get transferred out and our shortage was noticed by upper management, she accused us of not informing her of the issue, LMAO. Story 34. He always thought I was overreacting, like the silly little woman I am. For example, there was a flood in my classroom when a drain backed up. I called to let them know, got my students out, and hung out in the gym with them until the end of the day. The guy finally made it down to check it out and says, "I didn't think it was as big of a deal as you said." Then we had an electrical fire in the classroom when I told him what happened. He immediately turned to my male coworker and asked, "What really happened here?" I am no longer a teacher. Story 35. I worked for a company that did weekly live TV shows. Some of my favorites, I tried to call in sick on a non-travel or show day and was told, "Take a shot of tequila, stop being such a coward, and get back to work." I was the sickest I'd ever been in my life. The same person tried to attack me on an airplane. I woke up after working the previous night's show for 24 hours straight to a flight attendant keeping me awake saying, "Your dad is trying to yell at you and he seems pretty upset." He would have attacked me if the drink cart wasn't blocking him. He is not my dad. They finally decided to cut me after this role almost ended me, and with the CEO actually crying about how they'd hate to lose me after firing me, he said, "If you get on your hands and knees and beg to stay, we'll keep you. We don't know what we'll do without you." This happened a few years ago, and I am obviously still traumatized. There are so many more stories like this. Story 36. I was scheduled to work from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m., so I showed up to work and the place was locked up. I took a picture of the lock gate and called in to see if anyone was inside. After leaving a voicemail, I sat there until 8 p.m. before going back home. Thinking they had canceled the shift and failed to communicate, I sat down to watch football at home. At 10 p.m., I decided that must have been what happened because I still hadn't received a call, so I cracked open a beer. At 10:06 p.m., they called me to say they changed the schedule to start at 10 that evening and wanted to know where I was and if I was coming in. I explained to them the change was not communicated to me or posted before I left the previous day, so I was unaware. And because I'd moved on for the evening, drank some beer, I would not be able to safely come into work for that shift. They wrote me up and really suggested I should have just waited in case the shift was a 10 or 11 p.m. startup. I laughed at how ridiculous that was and told them I was more than willing to discuss on-call pay. They refused to remove the write-up throughout their joke of an appeal process. Story 37. I had a shift manager tell me I had to wait for my next break in just under 2 hours to go potty, and in the future, I would have to use my breaks if I had to go potty and not to ask to leave my station. He was short-staffed and clearly overwhelmed. Actually, he was usually extremely kind. My break ended up being an hour late, and by the time I got to the bathroom, the uncomfortable sensation I had felt and wanted to address but forgotten about entirely during the rushes had become a full-blown mess all over my clothing. It was black, so I could only tell my pants were soiled due to the wetness. I came out in front of customers and other employees or my manager who was manning my station that because he wouldn't let me go potty 3 hours ago, I had an accident all over my clothing, and since I was only provided one pair of uniform pants, I would now be required to go home to wash my uniform, and he would be even more short-staffed for the remainder of that day. I then grabbed my things and left without another word while he all got glared at by the old ladies in line. This was because I was 16 and made sure the entire building heard what he did. I didn't get written up or even spoken to, but I did hear many customers file complaints against him. Thing is, I genuinely keep everything one would need for a little accident and a waterproof wet bag in my purse at all times. Had he let me go potty right away, I wouldn't have had to leave. I would have just needed an extra long potty break. For the record, no, I didn't say I thought I started my time of the month. I was 16. And where anger tempered my teenage angst after he made me soil my clothing, I wasn't going to tell an attractive 20-something-year-old I was probably on my time of the month at 16 otherwise. Story 38. Company email went out exclaiming the record profits in all departments and the best shareholder payout in the history of the company. I had taken a $60,000 a year pay cut to move up to a desk job for being in the tools. After 9 months, working 12 hours a day, on call, 24/7, and only being paid 8 hours per day, Monday to Friday, I went into the boss's office and laid out the fact that our department was propping up the entire branch. My team of 8 was outperforming other teams of 40 in the company, and we were getting glowing customer feedback surveys specifically naming myself and the guys in my team for outstanding work. All this while I was struggling to pay the bills. Our department was doing $1.2 million worth of work a month with average profit margins around 45%. I asked for either training or a raise. Not once that I asked to stop doing the crazy unpaid overtime, even though everyone around me told me I was going to burn out eventually, just like the last 3 people who sat in that chair. He looked me in the eye and said, "The contract is what you signed. If you're not okay with it, I suggest you look elsewhere." 3 weeks later, I handed in my resignation, BCC'd HR in an email outlining 5 reasons with examples how I felt he was mistreating his employees. He wasn't a good boss during those 9 months to me or anyone else. He was not liked in the company. I went back on the tools for a customer of his, taking a load of work with me because I could do the work for them instead of paying my company for a tech. I doubled my wage on the way out. He didn't say a gosh darn thing to me the entire 4-week notice I gave him until the last afternoon at 2:30. He brought another guy to my desk as I was leaning back deleting files on my PC and said, "You need to run, insert name here, through how to do your job and get him up to speed." He walked away before I could respond. I looked at the new guy. He understood what was going on. I simply said no, kept deleting files, and left at 4 o'clock on the minute and met the team at the local pub to get on it. Screw you, Daryl. Story 39. I left my old job due to extreme burnout. I didn't see the warning signs and hit rock bottom one day after not sleeping so well after a CPTSD trigger. I was so rattled that I lost concept of time and was just trying to survive through it, honestly. I didn't turn up to my shift, which had never happened, and I didn't have the presence of mind to let anyone know. A few days later, my boss came to my house and sat with me in my kitchen and basically told me that it's really common for neurodivergent folks to not live past their late 30s. I think she was trying to comfort me, who was only just getting my grip on reality again. This was truly not helpful. She then said I should take as much time as I need before returning to work. I didn't return. Story 40. He didn't have to say a word, but his action said enough. At the time, I was split between 2 jobs, working my new job in the mornings and my old casual supermarket job in the evenings. I'd been there for 5 years as a part-timer and chose to go casual while I started my new job. I called in sick the day before due to fatigue. As I was walking in the next day for my shift, standing at the main entrance was my then boss on a phone call. He sees me walking in, looks me straight in the eye, points at me, and does the "You're doomed" finger slide across his neck at me. I never saw him the rest of the shift, and I resigned the next day. Story 41. You're doing a great job, but we're going to deny your pay increase if we don't think you do enough to make what the other supervisors make. This was after I asked to be paid the same as the other supervisors who do way less technical work than I do. The next week, I got demoted for having a poor attitude for not being a team player because I was bummed about not getting a raise. Last week, he also retracted all of my vacation time I had scheduled for the holiday that I had booked months ago. It's been a rough one. But hey, on a bright note, he told me I should thank him because with my demotion, I'll be hourly again instead of salary and can get overtime again. He consistently makes me deny my previous employees OT to save money, so my lab techs never get overtime, the same job I'm getting demoted to. And if any of these stories got to you too, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're gonna love this. I'll catch you in that video.